والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. All praise and glory belongs to Allah, the one who has given us the ability to choose the path in which we can reach that place that no other creation of His can. That place is the stature or the status of a human being. It was that place that the angels, once they recognized the greatness of it, they prostrated in front of that stature. If a person decides not to become a human being, the other choice exists as well for us, where we can become the worst of His creations. These two extremes to be able to choose and reach has not been given to any of His creation. It is you and I and all of humanity that can decide whether to become the best of His creations or to become the worst of His creations. To become the best of the creations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us guidance through the teachings and the role model of prophets and their successors. Yesterday, we mentioned to you that the guidance can be quantified into two. One is the ideology and the other is the values. This knowledge, if it was for a human being to be able to acquire it on its own, there was no need for guidance. When we look at religion, to us, it seems partly rituals, partly as a source of identification, partly a source by which we can let go of this temporary life, go through this temporary life, and get to heaven or hell. Of course, nobody chooses to go to hell. In their right mind, they would never make that decision. But the reason why we end up making that decision is because there are influences that influence our true nature. And that true nature is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us as an inclination. Meaning it is a potential that we need to bring about into action. And to do that, of course, you have on one side the guidance of the prophets and also the motivation that a person can take. Because we mentioned to you yesterday that any action that we do is for a result. Right? The ones who were here yesterday, it was for a result. Now this result could be out of fear that we want to avoid or out of desire that we want to gain. So it's either to avoid loss or to gain a benefit. All of our actions are based on that. Okay. And if we don't get the knowledge from the prophets, if we don't get the guidance from the prophets, then what happens is the things that we think is our benefit, actually there will be loss in it. And the things that we think is our loss, there is benefit in it. Okay. So the motivation is a phenomenon. You can go ask anybody who is doing anything in the world, and they will tell you either they're trying to avoid loss or they're trying to gain a benefit. So far, so good. Today, maybe we can talk a little bit about the influences. Why is it that we have the knowledge of our ideology? Maybe we have the knowledge of the values that Islam has given to us, yet we're not able to follow it. And we're not able to reach that place, which in other words is also a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the goal and the purpose of human beings is to become a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For that purpose, He has guided us. Yes, so namaz is not the goal of life. The goal of life is not to have your 5 times prayers and in the end, before you die, that you say, Alhamdulillah, I don't have a single qada prayer. Right? Or the goal is not to fast. That Alhamdulillah, I have no qada fasts. That we're satisfied. Or Hajj. Not that, oh, Alhamdulillah, I've done my Hajj or I've gone 10 times. Or ziyarah, for example. It's not the goal. That a person says, I've gotten to ziyarah, so check. To us, Islam becomes a checklist. Ziyarah, done. Hajj, done. Namaz, done. Fasting, done. Khums, done. Right? Amar bil maruf wa nahy anil munkar. Half mark, done. Right? Tawalla. Tawalla to hum karte hain. We do tawalla. Tabarra. Alhamdulillah, ila mashallah. Hum karte hain. Checklist. Islam, if it becomes a checklist for us, we will never reach that goal of becoming a representative of Allah. But if it becomes a source for us to be guided and motivated, to be able to have all of the resources and means that would facilitate the environment in which our potential can come from just being a potential into action and reach that place of a human being, which is a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then yes, we would become the best of creations. And if that doesn't happen, we will be the worst of creations, regardless if a person happens to call themselves a Muslim. Regardless if a person actually says that I believe in the velayat of Imam Ali. Regardless if a person decides to mourn Imam Hussain. Regardless of all of that, the person still will become the worst of creation. Why am I saying that? In Medina, who were they? Were they Muslims or no? Yeah? At the time of Imam Hussain, were they Muslims or no? Did they pray namaz? They did. Did they fast? They did. Did they go for Hajj? They did. Makkah, when Imam Hussain left Medina and went to Makkah, it was for what? It was time for Hajj. Were there not people performing Hajj? They were. In their own way, did they do Amar bil Maruf wa Nahy anil Munkar? They did. What was that Amar bil Maruf wa Nahy anil Munkar? As long as I'm okay, then it's all right. Did people not come in Medina and Makkah and advise the Imam Hussain that don't go? What do you think they were thinking? What are they doing by saying that to the Imam? They, in their own minds, they were trying to be somebody who's doing Amar bil Maruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. Did they have tawalla or not? They did. The people in Kufa, they convinced Hasan Muslim ibn Aqil that they loved Imam Hussain. They wrote letters to Imam Hussain. Imam Hussain had letters that were sent with him at the time of Karbala. He showed them the letters. So you're the one who wrote in these letters that you don't have an imam and you want an imam so that you can be guided with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. according to the way of the Holy Prophet, towards him. I'm right here. You called me. Did they mourn Imam Hussain salam? When the kafila, the caravan, came to Kufa and Bibi Zainab salam alayha recited her sermons, did they not cry? They cried. Bibi said, may you cry and may you forever cry. You have allowed for the grandson of the Prophet to be martyred and have his head come on a spear. If you look at today, the people who are committing the atrocities all over the world, in the name of Islam, what ideology? Are they calling themselves Christian or Jews? They call themselves Muslims. Our ideology and values have to be from the prophets. We need to be motivated to recognize what is the true loss and what is the true gain. We need to utilize our potential by using Islam as a tool, as a resource, to be able to facilitate the environment in the house, in the community, and the rest of the places that we are, so that this potential can come into action and we can reach that stature of the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? Right. If you can just remember this sort of a little bit of summary, a lot of things will become clear. You will not get content with the checklist of Islam. You'll keep looking at what has namaz given me? What has Hajj given me? What has Amar bil Maruf and Munkar has given me? What is Tawalla and Tabarra given to me? Am I reaching that place of becoming a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where I can deal with each other, when I can deal with my family, when I can deal with the community as a source of mercy of Allah, as a source of forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a source of generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we're still representing shaitan, if you are generous to somebody, let's just for a little while humor me, and we'll tell you what the other influences are. If you are generous to somebody, in whose representation are you being generous of? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you forgive somebody, in whose representation are you forgiving? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who forgives? Who's Ghafoor? Who's Ghaffar? Who's that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in his representation, you're going to forgive. I myself am nobody. I myself am nobody. Who am I to be generous? Who am I to be forgiving? Who am I to be merciful? Who am I to be a being who loves others? Who am I? Nothing. But if I am doing that, I'm actually doing that in his representation, because truly in all of his essence, he's the one who's generous. He's the one who's forgiving. He's the one who's merciful. He's the one who loves. And it is his representation that I'm showing to each other, to myself. Who feeds the small child? Tifl al-Saghir, who feeds him? Huh? Who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Dua Joshani Kabir, don't you have that? You do. When a mother is feeding the little child, she is a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So, if you look at the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the 1,000 qualities that have been mentioned in Dua Joshani Kabir, instead of looking at those things to acquire them and to become a representative, we're looking at the verses of Dua Joshani Kabir to resolve our knee pain. But if you were to recite this, your knee pain is going to go away. If you recite this, you're going to get a lot of sustenance. If you recite this, you're going to be protected from your enemies. You could recite. We're actually, I don't know, why are you looking at me like, don't we do that? Don't we have Dua Joshani Kabir when we are reciting on topic, it says, it's good for the ailment of the body, it's good for the eyes, it's good for the headache, it's good for the knees, it's good for the heart. No? Those qualities were mentioned in Dua Joshani Kabir so that we can look at his qualities and acquire them in our soul and become a source of those to others. That is our purpose. So what are the influences? One of the influences that we have forgotten is shaitan. You know, lakum aduwwun mubin. He is your open enemy. We've forgotten him. As if he doesn't even exist. Yeah. What does shaitan do? He does three things, and I'll mention those to you. One is that he makes you forget. One is that he makes you forget. The other is that he exaggerates your feelings, your emotions, your desires. He doesn't bring from outside. It's whatever you have, your feelings, your emotions, your desires, he just exaggerates those. And the third thing that shaitan does, he comes to you as someone who's a well-wisher of yours, like an advisor. When he came first to our parents, how did he come? He didn't come in the form of a snake. That's something Christianity has. He didn't come in any of those. If you see somebody coming to you and they have like two horns coming out of their head and it's all red color with a tail, you'll be like, who's going to listen to that guy? Nobody. You're going to be running away. He, at that time, he worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 6,000 years. His appearance and his actions and his, speech was so appealing that even the angels, they looked at him and said, this person is our leader. And when he came to Hazrat Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, it was in that respect. So what were the three things that shaitan does? Like on the last one, for example, if shaitan comes in the form of Maulana, what were you going to do? And then many times he does come in the form of a Maulana. He'll sit down on the mimbar of the Prophet and he'll tell you, Maazallah, even like the most basic thing of anybody as a Muslim, the most basic of things that, for example, Maazallah, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, Maazallah is God. It's like, wah, 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 wah. And he gets paid like, $50,000, $70,000 for 10 days. In Pakistan, a poor country, quote unquote. Cuts down the roots of Islam, get people away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get them away from Salah, get them away from Hajj, get them away from the Furu'at, get them away from the purity of the soul, get them on the wrong direction, where religion just becomes a source for them to become pleased and happy and get refreshed and feel that they have done something, where they start feeling I'm more righteous than the other. They become arrogant. They start fighting each other on the different things of Azah, of the features of Azah. Right? On Matam, on centers. Who do you think breaks the centers? Why do we have, almost every center in the community, one, and then from one, beside 10 is 15? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did that. The prophets told us that. Aimma told us that. Imam Hussain said, they fight in my name and then divide. That if one person is not doing matam to your liking, divide yourself from that person. Who did that? So when he comes and he makes you forget is, that, for example, you wanted, what would be a good action? You wanted to ask for forgiveness from somebody. You saw the person. You wanted to ask for forgiveness. And then 2 minutes pass by and he makes you forget and you don't ask for forgiveness. Or you try to do something good, it makes you forget. Or you try to do something good, he puts somebody that you love as a hurdle in front of you. It makes you forget what your initial intention was. As Maulana was talking, he was giving a speech, and then he said that, when you try to do something good, 70 shayateen, they come in the way of that person, and they're not able to do that good action. So the people were listening, and afterwards how you discussed some what Maulana said and so forth, some of the things you like and some you don't like. And so they were talking with each other, and he said to one person said to his friend, what is this Maulana talking about? I'm going to show him. He said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to go and I'm going to give something in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm going to prove this guy wrong that he's saying 70 shayateen come in my way. So I said, okay. So he goes, he comes back. He said, what happened? You're coming empty-handed. Where is what you wanted to give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He said, well, what happened is I went to the house and started picking stuff to give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I picked up the table and the wife was like, why are you doing this? I said, I wanted to give this in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, are you okay? We just bought this table. I went and picked up something else. He's like, what's going on? He said, I don't know about 70 shayateen, but the mother of them stopped me. Right? So, I was not able to do that. When you try to do something right, the people that are closest to you, they stand up as a hurdle. They stop you. So, one thing that he does, he makes you forget. So, what's the best thing to do? When you intend to do something good, when you intend to ask for forgiveness, you should do it right away. Because if you delay it, this is his job. He's going to make you forget. Second was what? He's already made you forgotten. No? What was second? Exaggerates. There are many, many examples that I can give you about that, but we'll just, for example, you end up liking something of a material. What do you like nowadays? Cell phone? Okay. So it's like, Samsung S7 Edge with all of its features, with this and with this and with this. Before it comes out, it's like, already the adverts there, like, Mac Pro is coming out. Before that, they introduce it. What features, this is going to be like all of this, touch, do this. And then the advertising goes out and like people like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. And they line up, they stay all night, and they get that in their hands. So, well, you know what? Kind of looks the same as S6. It doesn't seem like much of a difference. But at that time, they've already given $1,000, $2,000. That feeling becomes that exaggerated that a person would leave their house, face the elements, camp outside on a concrete, wait for hours to rush into the door to get the same thing that they can buy tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, after a year or 10 years. And they will spend that money that they earned working so hard to get that. And because of these influences, although we're talking about ourselves now, we have the ideology, we have the world view given to us. We know what our values are, but we're not able to act on it. Because one is the influence of shaitan. And then I'll give you the example of what a shaitan is, and then see how many shayateen are around you. With me? Yes? Should I give you or leave it? So one thing we have agreed on, that shaitan appearance is not like with two horns and red and with a tail. Okay? Shaitan can come in many different forms, and it can even come in the form of a loved one or a Maulana. Okay. And if you, like, of course, I'm wearing the dress of it. But if you think about it, majority of our issues or problems that we are facing is because someone who sat on the minbar and said it. So the definition of shaitan is this: anything or anyone that makes you forget that you were supposed to do something good, exaggerates your lowly desires, wants, or fears, or needs, or comes in the form of a loved one or a well-wisher to take you away from Allah. Now in that, it could be your husband, it could be your wife, it could be your children, it could be your Samsung S7, it could be your Facebook. How many times you guys are checking your Facebook and the namaz time has gone? Oh, I got involved in Facebook so much that I forgot it was time for prayer. My asr got qada. Or YouTube. Could be Netflix. It could be the next car that you're looking for. It could be the house. It could be the media. See how many shayateen around us? And we are so content. Oh, I'm okay. No problems. I'm fine. We're giving ourselves, we're having that influence to change our values and our worldview, and we're not realizing that. I mentioned to you that, our children that are growing up, or even ourselves, we have become a photocopy of what is around us. We literally have become a photocopy. Now, to find original work is hard to find. And original thought is hard to find. Everybody is following in that sort of sheep mentality where whatever the other person is doing, the other person is going to follow. You look at the haircuts. Before, the haircut was, if somebody actually got out of bed and came outside, the person would be looking at him and saying, maybe he's a homeless person. Should give him some money. Bichara doesn't have a comb. Maybe he doesn't have a house where he can, make his hair look nice and neat. Today is a fashion. You remember the old days where the bell bottoms? Remember those? They used to be like this big and people used to trip. If somebody did not wear those bell bottoms, this is odd. It came and it went. Right? So for our sisters too, it's like the same. For our brothers, it's the same. For our sisters, hijab, Islamic dress is supposed to be so that the other person don't really get attracted to you. And today, we have the styles of hijab, that 3 curls or 4 curls and this pin or that pin in that color or that. How does it start? One sister does it. Everybody, this is really nice. And starts doing it. And all of these things that we have is changing our ideology and it's changing our values. We're living in a time where you are going to be told what to think, and whatever you're thinking is going to be known. If you look at all of our issues, like for example, one issue comes up, somebody says something or someplace, I was in England, the center got, the police came and, Mu'mineen were fighting. And there was a petition against the Julus. There was a lot of issues that were happening in that community. But I was getting messages from Canada, people telling me that, because I was in England, people telling me, this is what's happening. It was in Luton, it was there in Canada, and people were giving me news of what is happening where I was 25 minutes, distance. All of this is now, whatever that we're going to do, whatever that is out there, everybody is going to know. Whatever way you want to shape and form anyone's thinking, all you have to do is put it on your group chat, put it on your email, put it in the, what else is there? Snapchat, put it on WhatsApp. Oh, you get a hadith, the sixth Imam has said such and such. Biharul Anwar, Jid number 33, Safa number, page number 213. Oh, it looks authentic. You go and you take a look at, the 33rd volume and you look at the page. The actual chapter does not even exist on that topic. You look at that page, not that translation, no. For example, the chapter is talking about Qiyamah and the thing that you got was dealing with, for example, something to do with the Azaf Imams. Oh, we accept it. This sounds good. Forward it to somebody else. And now everybody that are part of your group is getting that hadith. Something which is associated to the sixth Imam, which is actually not there. Oh, I saw it there, I saw it there, I saw it there. So this is what Islam is. Our values have to be what the prophets have told us. If we want our actions to be beneficial, we need to do what they have said. If we want to avoid loss, we need to do what they have said. At least us who have this guidance should become a role model for the rest. When we talk about Imam Sajjad, since it is his time, and now lovely poetry that the brother recited. When we talk about Imam Sajjad, there are three things that I can talk to you about that maybe will change your ideology or view of Imam Sajjad. One of the things that we think about Imam is that he was Bimar Imam. Bimar Imam meaning that he was sick all of his life. Imam Sajjad was ill at the time, the 9th or the 10th. Imam Sajjad was ill. He was not well. But after that, the illness went away. He had 2 years at the time of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, 10 years Imam Hasan, 10 years Imam Hussein, and the rest of his life was about 35 years after Karbala. In those 35 years, Imam Sajjad built the foundation for Imam Baqir. And that foundation continued to the 6th Imam. Imam Sajjad, Imam Baqir and Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, they owe Imam Sajjad. You know how he did it? Not sure if I have told you that before. One was, of course, whenever he would see certain things, he would keep reminding people about Imam Hussein. So water, food, when he would walk in the market, when somebody was sacrificing an animal, when he would see meat that had been cut, when he would sit down in the shade, that in his actions, when he was among people, any of those things as associated as a sign towards Imam Hussein, he would make sure to remind them. And it was not that he was doing it to remind others. It was a constant reminder for himself. That he lived through that. That it was him that whenever he would see an animal being sacrificed, it was in him that would make him stop and say, have you given it water? And then when the person would say, yes, I've given him water, he would cry. He would say, you know, my father his head was severed when he was thirsty for 3 days. It was in him. It was going through his mind all of the time. The other thing that Imam Sajjad did was that he would buy slaves, keep them for a certain amount of time, teach them, correct them, give them enough to elevate their spirituality, to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once he saw them to be such, he would free them. In which time did he live? He lived in a time where Medina was actually known for singing. That in every household there were, parties of women singing, mixed gatherings. There were schools that would teach how to sing. That the historians say that it seemed that Medina was as if it was made for that. He lived among those people. That there were not 20 people who would come and ask him how he is. After the event of Karbala. So he would take a slave, get him all of that, and when the slave is freed, the slave would go among the people and give the teachings of Imam Sajjad to them. Wherever city that this slave belonged to, when it would get freed, he would go there and tell the people about his master. Yeah, he would tell them about how he worshipped. He would tell them how the atrocities were committed, how his back had marks. He would tell them that of the righteousness of Imam Sajjad, of the piety of Imam Sajjad. He would narrate, I heard him recite this particular dua. How many slaves? 50,000. Not just slaves. They were students of Imam Sajjad. After having all of this gham and him completely broken up after Karbala, coming back to Medina, with all of that he had in his heart, he continued. Not only continued, but made an immense amount of contribution to the path of Imam Hussein and to the path of Rasulullah, to the path of Ahlul Bayt. One narration states that in the month of Ramadan, he would bring all of his slaves and tell them that this is a journal of all of the mistakes that you have committed all year. I've written them down. Then he would say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, these are their mistakes. And I am forgiving them in hopes that you will forgive my mistakes. You will forgive my sins. And when you have a master like that, all of these slaves would fall in love to the point where they would die for him. You tell me, can you find somebody like that? You can't. Imam Sajjad is known for Zainul Abidin. He's known for Sayyidul Sajidin. He's known for his worship. Worship is not, if he was just known for his worship on the Musalla, that was a different thing. Imam Sajjad is known for Zainul Abidin is because every action of his was the worship of Allah. Every action. And if you were to take any of the ones that are called Abid and you bring Imam Sajjad in them, what you will find is that these slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would become more beautiful. Because the light of him was such that it would beautify. No matter what a person had done in the submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Imam Sajjad would enter in among those companions or among those group of people, it would just become more beautiful. Because there were, in his worship, the intention was so pure that you could not find anyone. Right? If you perform worship with impure intention, it's not beautiful worship. It's not even worship. For example, you had prayers, people come in for namaz, one walk out as a person of heaven and the other walks out as a person of hell. Why? Because of their intention. If they intended to submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they walk out as a heavenly being. If they submitted to the will of their lowly desires to show off to people, they walk out as a person of hellfire. Imam's intentions were beautiful. His submission, his humility was unmatched. And the third thing that we think about Imam Sajjad is the prison. I mentioned that to you yesterday. If our ideologies are not corrected, and if our ideology is not from the prophets, and if our values are not from the prophets, we will imprison ourselves in the wrong worldview, in the wrong ideologies, in the wrong values, and as that prisoner, we will never be freed. The people who put Imam Sajjad in the prison, they were the prisoners. Imam Sajjad, in his world, in his worldview, in his values, inside, was a free man. If he was a prisoner, he would have submitted to their will. He didn't. If he was not a free man, he saw with his eyes the daughters of the Prophet with their hair open, with those people who were looking at them. He saw the atrocities in front of him. But all of those atrocities that bring the tears of blood to our Imam, it never broke him to the point that he would submit to whatever the enemy was saying. When Imam is asked, they would say that, a person saw Imam in his dream, and he says to the Imam of the time, he says that we've heard that you cried the tears of blood. Is that true? Imam said, yes. He said, is it because of the martyrdom of Imam Hussain? He said, no. Is it because of Hazrat Abbas? Is it because of Hazrat Ali Akbar? He kept on saying. He said, no. He said, is it because of Hazrat Ali Asghar? He said, no. He replied, he said, Asham, Asham, Asham. Because what happened in Sham makes me cry the tears of blood. And wherever the Imam happens to be, when he cries, our ulama, in particular, Ayatollah Bahjat, has said that in the month of Muharram, in the month of Safar, you should give sadaqah in the name of the Imam of the time for his safety. He said that Imam cries so much. In these months, he remembers the atrocities and he cries so much that he comes to the point of leaving this earth. Imam Sujat saw those atrocities from his eyes. He saw the daughters of the Prophet in the marketplace with stones being thrown at them. He saw the Imam Hussein's daughter, his sister, Bibi Sakina. He saw her face with the impression, with her face being blue, with the signs of the beating that was given to her. He saw Bibi Sakina's ears bleeding. He saw when Bibi Sakina fell from the camel and she was dragged. He was a free man. He submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he was a free man. Our imams are our role models. In those difficult times, if somebody was to just say that, okay, I'm not going to do Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, in those dire circumstances, if Imam had decided not to do, who would complain? Who would say that, why did you not do Amar bil Ma'ruf? He didn't, he carried on. This prison that we talk about, it was actually a house that was going to, it was a house that it seemed as if it was going to fall on them, on the prisoners. These daughters of the prophets and these orphans, when they had ended up in Sham, if they closed their eyes, all they would see is the events that led them to Sham. Some of them had lost everything. They had lost their children, they had lost their husband, they had lost their brother. When they would close their eyes, they would see the images go through. When Bibi Sakina was brought that platter in which there was the severed head of Imam Hussein, and she picked up, what did she do? She started saying to Baba, you know what happened to us? Shimmer hit me on my face. He took the earrings from my ear. We were made prisoners. We were dragged in the marketplaces. Imam Sujat saw all of that. When you look at all of the atrocities, I think one place Imam Sujat's heart was really, really broken up. He was in the prison. He's a brother to a daughter who's seen all of this. And she's lying on the floor of the prison. Beside her is the severed head of her father. And she's left this world. His heart must have really been broken up. He's tired. He needs to, what am I going to do with this body? I'm going to bury it. Allah, We beseech you, we ask you, for the sake of the heart of Imam Shajjad, for the sake of those hands that dug the grave of Bibi Sakina, we ask you to give us the motivation to be able to utilize the guidance, the right ideology, the right values, to be able to get to that place of a human being, for us to become the role models for the rest of humanity, to protect their humanity. Oh Allah, we ask you to give us enough basira, enough wisdom, enough courage to be able to stand against our lowly desires and the shayateen that are around us. Oh Allah, give us the wisdom and the courage to be able to become the helpers of the Imam of the time. Give us the ability to give some comfort to that broken heart of the Imam by accepting some of our actions, so that the Imam of the time is pleased with us. May he come as soon as